Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. The bill before us, House File 1027, creates a sub-minimum wage for tipped employees. And, as this issue has been debated about since I have been elected, I've always been confounded by it because I believe that hard work pays off. And I was a server starting in high school and all the way through college. And I worked very hard. I know lots of servers, men and women, and I'm sure there are plenty of us in this body who work hard. I liked my work a lot. It was very human, but there were some downsides to it. And I want to talk a little bit about a report that I have called The Glass Floor that was released in October of 2014 that highlights the sexual harassment that is endemic in the restaurant industry across our country. And as I read through the study, I will have to say that I didn't really find the findings all that surprising, given my experience first at the Backstage restaurant in the Janesville Mall and that at a Perkins. I used to ride my bike to Perkins, and when I'd ride home after my shift, there was a lot of syrup involved at that place, so that was never very pleasant. And then I worked at a supper club all through college called Mr. Elmer's, and I worked with people who were, of course, coming for dinner, but also for cocktails, and that sometimes changes people's behaviors. So I want to talk just a little bit about the findings of this study. In the study, they say nearly 80% of women and 70% of men experience some form of sexual harassment from their coworkers. And nearly 80% of women and 55% of men experience some form of sexual harassment from their customers. Women in states with a sub-minimum wage are twice as likely to experience sexual harassment in the workplace. The report concludes that allowing employers to pay certain workers less than the full minimum wage means that those employees must be supplemented by tips to earn their living, and they seek those tips to earn their living. And that serves to magnify the power imbalance between the server and the customer, and it blurs the lines between good customer service and tolerating inappropriate behavior. And I know, we probably can all talk about this kind of behavior, but there were certainly times when hands were on me where they didn't belong. And you tolerate that, right? Because you want to earn your tips. And I was working in a place where we earned $2.13 an hour, and I was putting myself through college, and I needed to earn those tips, so I didn't want to object too much. And I will say also that the study concludes that managers who are seeking happy customers are often unresponsive to complaints by employees. The study that I am referring to, called The Glass Floor, suggests that there's a familiar culture of sexual harassment in states with less than a minimum wage for their tipped employees. Minnesota is one of a very few number of states that does not have a sub-minimum wage for tipped employees. And by voting for House File 1027, we are not only paying tipped employees, servers, less for their hard work, but we're also subjecting them to an environment that is much more likely one of harassment for those employees. My amendment suggests that after 3 or more probable cause determinations of sexual harassment made by the Department of Human Rights, the tiered wage is no longer in force for that employer, and the full minimum wage must be paid. Instead of supporting servers who are working hard to earn a living, with this bill tonight, we're choosing to shortchange workers and their families and their children. And since tip employees rely on customers for their income, they're subjected to and tolerate inappropriate behavior from customers in order to earn their living wage. This Garofalo bill tonight creates a sub-minimum wage for tipped employees and instead of paying them for their hard work, we're creating an environment ripe for harassment. And I'd ask you to vote for my amendment tonight in order to say if there are examples, 3 probable cause claims that have been upheld by the Department of Human Rights, that we return to a full minimum wage for those tipped employees, and we reduce the level of harassment, and we reward their hard work with decent pay. Thank you.
Further discussion on the first portion of the Murphy amendment. Representative Garofalo.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, members. And even though this provision is not in law under the existing two-tiered minimum wage that was passed last session, I am willing to take this provision into conference, so I would encourage a green vote.
Mr. Speaker, you can withdraw the roll call, please.
The roll call has been withdrawn. Any further discussion on the first portion of the amendment? Seeing no further discussion on the first portion of the Murphy E amendment, all those in favor of that portion signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The motion prevails, and the first portion of the amendment is adopted.